Hi there, got an important message for you, for all of you on the path today that I felt like sharing, and it's to do with processing the so-called negative emotions and the root cause of these negative emotions and the spiritual pitfalls around experiencing emotions like grief or anger. And then sometimes on the path, it's obviously part of this experience that very challenging emotions come up to the surface. For those of you who meditate, you know that the longer you meditate, the more layers of the unconscious will be exposed to you. And then one day you might encounter a deep sadness or an anger where you're like, wow, where is this coming from? I thought I had kind of processed that, but it's just another layer that we encounter then. And of course for you, for the ones on the path, with Kundalini, the spiritual awakening, it's probably not even worth mentioning the roller coaster of unprocessed old emotions that we experience on this path when we're fully committed. So one thing I realized over and over again, and I myself fell into many traps on the path, and that's why I do these videos, to share these insights with you, is that sometimes the ego thinks it knows the root cause of a certain emotion. Let's say you deal with intense anger or rage during your awakening, something that you encounter over and over again. And what I find sometimes, because our consciousness has this experience, but the ego also has this experience. So when we experience an awakening, it's like the pure consciousness, the soul that goes through that, but the ego is also part of it. And the ego also has an opinion about where negative emotions come from. For the ones of you dealing with past trauma, you may know this pathway of, okay, this is the anger that I'm dealing with, and this is the root cause of my anger. Let's say, just an example, your father is the root cause of your anger, or your mother, or this past relationship, or this situation from the past, or the bully in school is the true root cause of your anger. Or let's say you experience intense grief, old ancient sadness, then sometimes you might have this idea about the grief, oh, that's because of this and that loss, it's unprocessed. And of course there might be a link to these events from the past, but what I've observed within my own path is, whenever I dealt with anger, for example, there was like a sneaky way of the ego. And this is something that you have to be you have to have a lot of awareness to notice, like, these sneaky backdoor ways of the ego, that it always needs a target. It's like this. There were years during my awakening where whenever I processed anger, I was sure that it had to do with this and this relationship, or then I found myself in a place where I processed intense anger, and I was absolutely convinced that it had to do with one of my parents. And then there was a time where whenever I would feel anger, I knew, oh, of course it's about the system we live in. You know, this externalizing, finding external factors for the emotion in order to explain the emotion. And that's very natural, because I think this is how human beings are actually wired. Of course, we feel something and we want to find the root cause and explanation for it. And then for a very long time, it was then the system, the society we live in. Of course, on one level it's true. Yeah, we do live on one dimension in a sick world. Yes, our parent was dysfunctional. Yes, this relationship caused some trauma. Yes, on one relative level that's true. But it's never the root cause to this emotion. So all of that is never the root cause for this anger, for example. Because the source of these so-called negative emotions, like grief or anger, which are in a way illusory because it's something that the body experiences, and emotion is a physical experience, emotion, energy and motion. Therefore, it's on the level of the body-mind thing, therefore not completely real. And who is it that experiences these emotions and wants to find the root cause? It's the ego, of course. And the cause is always the separation, because the ego feels separate. Like, you come here into this world, the soul incarnates here into this body, and the second it arrives here, the human being feels separate from God. It's almost like, it feels like the link between this individual and the divine had been severed. And there's this like chronic feeling of separation within human beings. And on the spiritual path, we become very much aware of this constant, like how the ego feels always separate and always needs its stories about me and the other, division, separation. And that's where we actually find the root cause of these emotions. Because when we feel separate from God, of course it results in a deep grief, or in an anger, resentment even. And then this ancient core grief or anger or whatever it is then being projected throughout life onto various situations, people, onto ourselves even. So I'm not saying that your emotions aren't real. Of course, you experience them as something real, and yes, the situation or that person might have made you feel angry, but these things aren't the root cause of these emotions. And we observe that by actually observing how exchangeable sometimes these targets of the ego can be. One time it's the system, one time it's your parent, one time it's your ex-husband or whatever. That was just a message that I wanted to deliver today, and I'm always glad to share my insights and experiences from my own path. See you next time. Namaste.